Hi, I'm going to show you how to do perfect blanket corners with bias tape. So here's some real pretty purple one folded bias tape that I'm going to put on my frozen blanket on the edge. So I'm going to start by turning it inside out at the bottom middle of the blanket. Okay, and just temporarily pin that so I can see where the first corner comes to. So this will be the bottom left corner that I'm doing first. Okay, so just measure out where that bends on the corner, both sides of it. Okay. Temporarily pin down around that corner. Okay, so you've got a pin on each side and you can see where that corner meets. Okay, push it together and you can see where it wants to come together. This needs to be flush here, and the center of your bias needs to be flush with the outside edge. Okay, so we're measuring from the center of the bias fold, or the center of the bias tape, which is on the fold, down to where this is flush here. Okay, and you're going to pin that little tuck, and that's your sewing line. That's exactly where that corner needs to be mitered. For it to lay flat. Okay, so then undo your temporary pins around it. This is what it looks like. That's your sewing line. But if you take this off, the opposite side of this corner will be the mirror image of what you just did. So where you've got this, go straight across. Make sure your sides are even. And take something straight, figure out where you are leaving the edge there with your sewing machine, and a straight across is where you're going to leave the edge on the other side with your machine. Okay. So really all you have to know is where to start your machine with a back stitch, go up to your folded middle, go down and exit where your pin is and do your back stitch there. Okay? And that's for this left bottom corner. Now I will advise you, each corner is different. Okay? So I would go ahead and sew this and then place it on this corner, and then we'll finish the rest of the corners. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, this is what it looks like sewn on both sides. And I'm gonna cut and cut, and then pin it to my corner, and then keep going. And we'll get the next corner measured and mitered correctly, because it'll be slightly different than this corner, possibly. Okay, this is what my corner looks like, and remember, it's inside out right now because we want to miter our corners. They're both cut, pinned down, ready to go to the next corner. Okay. Okay, so from the corner we just did, I've pinned down along the side, just a couple pins. The least amount of pins you use is the better, or else it makes a run in this bias tape. All right, so then it's important to pin on each side of the corner so it stays where you want it to. And get that corner where it is laying down. And like I said, every corner is different, just slightly. Okay. So you want to pin it from the fold, which is on the edge, down to where this is flush here and there's no extra material. You can't really see that. I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, do you see that? That's our sewing line. So you want it flush here with both those edges, and you want to go to that middle fold line. Okay, then remember the back side's going to be the mirror image of it for this corner only. So pull your pins out. And we're going to mirror image this. Make sure your sides are straight. And this is flush across here. Okay. Then measure with a ruler or something straight where your entrance side or exit side is here. And it's going to be the same on the other side. And it's important to get that just right so that you go down at the same angle. So really all you need to know is exactly where you want to start and end, and then you're going to go right up to the middle. So there's no question where you're going here, but you need to mark where you're coming in and out. Okay, so we will backstitch here and go at an angle up to the middle, and then come down at an angle down to this exit area and backstitch here. See you in a minute. Okay, I sewed it, and it's the mirror image of each other, and we're going to trim. Okay, leave a little edge for the seam, and throw your trash away as you go. Little corner triangles ready to go in the trash. Okay, so this is what we have. We're going to pin it down to our corner again and then go to the next corner. Now remember, this is still inside out, but you can tell it's going to lay down flat when we turn it right side out, because it's laying down flat now. Okay, it's exactly a perfect blanket corner. Okay, I pinned down my top edge of the blanket. See, the frozen faces are looking correctly at me now. We already did the other two corners on the left-hand side. Now we're going to do the right-hand side. So you come along and make sure it's form-fitting. Pin it down to the left of the corner. Make sure you're using new, really pointed pins, or else you're gonna run your bias tape and it'll look horrible. Okay, you wanna form fit that corner so it lays nice and flat. Get it right in the corner. Okay, pin down to the right hand side. Okay, and notice where that wants to just naturally stand up. Make sure your fold is on the edge. Measure from that fold out. Make sure these are flush. And pin that sucker, and that will be your sewing line. Okay, that's our sewing line. We're going to undo these pins. We're going to mirror image the back side of this bias tape like we did before. Make sure both sides are straight. That's a little crooked, so I'm going to even it up by taking my pin out, but not forgetting where my pinhole is. Okay, so it should just lay down flat for you. You go straight across and go straight across here. And have the same exit hole. Okay, this is our third corner, and we've sewn it. Now we're going to trim it. And if for some reason your corner doesn't lay flat, it's okay. You can always sew a deeper line below the line that you've just done. So it all works out. I've never made a corner too deep. I've always had to take it deeper. Okay, fit your upper right hand corner of the blanket into that. Oh, excuse me. You get the real me today. I must be hungry. I am fasting for the coronavirus to end. Today is Good Friday, and so excuse the burp, but it must be a hungry burp. Okay, so it's still inside out, remember. Okay, just keep going down. We're on our last corner. Okay, now this is something I didn't show you. I knew I didn't have enough ribbon or bias tape, so I bought a second one and I attached the two together. Okay, so how I did that was I did right sides together. So I had the end of the first bias tape right side and put the top of the new bias tape on the top with the right sides together. Okay, make sure all your edges are even, and you sew from this corner straight across to this corner. And then you trim it and it lays flat for you. And this is the end result. See? See how it looks? It's right sides together. And I did happen to sew this twice just to make sure it was nice and steady, sturdy. I trimmed it down and look, it just folds like that. Very nice. Okay, now this is the reason I am using this bias tape, is to cover up my horrible edge. Started out okay as just this, just a single stitch, but I wanted it to be fancier, but it was too thick of material and it just started going all wonky. So I'm covering this up. I'm not unpicking it. I'm going to cover it up with my bias tape. I was unhappy with how that turned out, so no one's going to even see it now. Okay, so measure the corner, temporarily pin this down. Okay, and we'll do the corner like we did all the others. Find where it wants to just poke up. Make sure everything's flush. And pin that down. Okay, there's our sewing line. This is flush and our fold on the bias tape is on the edge. Okay, take out your temporary pins and make this a mirror image on the back side like we did the other 3 corners. But you've got to make sure this is straight too. It looks like I pinned it a little wonky, so I'm going to fix that. But don't forget where your pinhole is. Like you said, you really just need that pinhole to know where to start and end. But you know where the middle is. Okay, make sure the top is flush. Okay, I pinned down my last corner. It's all mitered. Ready to go to our middle bottom, which is where we started. So, remember we're going to have extra bias tape left over. Pin it over to where you meet the point of where we started. And you're going to want to have some extra, when you first start, my pin didn't go in until, you know, good 10 inches. So you have room to play with. Okay. But to end this, you have to be right on where it needs to lay flat. Okay, so it's pinned. And we're trying to meet the end from the beginning. So if you fold up your starting point, you'll see the width of the ribbon. That's what you need to know where to cut this other at. Okay, so pinned. We're getting close to the end. Here's where that other ribbon is. And here's where the width that ends. And that's where you need to cut it at. This is right here. Do you see that? See how I just folded that up so you can see where to cut it at? But of course, don't cut that first without checking it. Make sure I'm right. So I'm going to pin where I think I'm going to cut, which is right there. And then we're going to check it. Okay, so let's act like I'm going to cut it there. That's going to be the end. Just give it a fold. Take your beginning part, right sides together. Okay, and we're going to sew from that left corner down to the right corner. So once that's sewn, that will fold up like that. And this will lay down just right. So that's correct. There's nothing extra. All right, I'll show you in a minute. Okay, then take time to wrap up the ribbon you haven't used yet, or why do I keep calling it ribbon? The bias tape that you haven't used. So it's still really good, and who knows what other project you'll need it for. But stick it back in the package if you can, so that you remember what color number it is. All right? Hopefully that will fit back in there. Yeah, it should. Yep. So then I know what color it is, and I think I will mark on here how much I used, so I know how much is gone. So that means I'm going to measure from here to there, see how much of that new ribbon or bias tape I used, and mark it on my package so I know that's not a full amount anymore. Okay, so I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do right sides together and sew and make sure everything's flush. You need that both sides flush. I'm going to sew from the left to the right corner. See you in a minute. Okay, now I don't use any pins when I sew that, because once you get your needle in the edge, it holds it for you. And then just sew to the other corner. I'm going to trim the excess. Remember, the least amount of pins you use is the better with this shiny bias tape, because it likes to run and fray. So be careful when you poke it. Okay, throw your triangles away. All right, and that's what the shiny side looks like. And I almost got, oh no, I did too. Yep, our folds match perfect. Okay, and our edges match. And that's exactly what you want. Okay, and then voila, that folds down. And I don't need to keep pinning that because we're just going to turn it inside out now. Okay, so remember where this beginning and ending stitch is. It's at the bottom middle of the blanket. Okay, so put my finger on here. This is bottom middle. And it happens to be right under Anna's face. So I will remember that. But it won't be hard to forget, because the corner is the corner, and that's my starting point, is that left bottom corner has to go back to the same left bottom corner. And remember, every corner is just slightly different from each other when you miter them. All right, see you in a minute. Since I have two starting points, or two places where I measure those together, I'm going to go ahead and just mark my left bottom corner with a pin so I don't forget. I'm still unpinning, so I've got to turn it right side out now. Okay, I've got all that ribbon off, and I need to turn it inside out. Right side showing. We need to make sure to poke out all four corners. I just use scissors or the end of my seam ripper. Be careful picking it out on the outside, because it might make it fray. Okay, there's the one corner poked out. Ah, there's my pin. There's my bottom left corner. So I still want to remember that. Bottom left corner has a pin. And I'm going to poke out this corner so it looks good. I'm going to continue to poke out the other two corners. Be right back. Okay, I've got my corners poked out. They look perfect. They're not even on the blanket yet. So I want to find my corner with the pin. Here it is. That's my bottom left corner, which goes here. Nope, that was the wrong corner. Ah, good thing I'm using a character quilt. Okay, bottom left is here. And just make sure that it ended in the bottom middle like you remembered. Yes, there's our sewn part there. Okay, so feel free to start with your corner. Make sure the corner of the blanket goes right into the corner of your bias tape. And get both sides of this corner nice and even. You want the edge of the blanket in the middle fold of your project. Okay, so you want that blanket corner up in that corner, and then everything else to lay down on each side of it. Okay, once you can feel you've got it, go ahead and pin it. Okay. Takes a little bit just to get that blanket edge where you want it. Okay. Now it's very important to keep your bias tape middle on that edge. If you've got it pulled too far, it's going to roll. And you don't want it rolled up. You don't want it rolled back. You want it exactly where it goes. Which is on the edge. Okay, so there's one corner ready to go. And I'm just going to sew along here. And I might sew twice because the back side might look different than the front side, and you want to make sure you get them all with no missing sections without a sewn line. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to do each of my corners like this. I'll be back. Here's my second corner. Okay, here's my third corner, and it didn't quite lay down like I wanted it to. There's extra room. So we'll just take that stitch a little deeper. You have to turn it inside out to do it. Okay, the front's even a little wonky, so that corner ended up different. So you want it with no tuck at all. So that just needs to be taken deeper and it'll clear it right up. Okay. On to the next corner. Now remember, I could have left the blanket with that edge with just one stitch and that would have been very acceptable. But I tried to make it fancy and it got really gross. So I'm covering it up with this bias tape, which will actually make the whole project pop because it'll look great. Once you wash and dry it, after we're all done sewing the edge on, it'll gather itself together and look really great. So I am almost done pinning down everything. Be right back. Okay, so I've got it all pinned everywhere. Bias tape is ready to be sewn on, except I'm only unhappy with one corner. This didn't lay down very well. There's extra here. So I'm gonna do this inside out and take my stitch down a little further and fix that problem. Okay, can you see I took it a little deeper, went further down. Okay, and I'm gonna wanna trim just above the other stitch. Okay. Okay, cool. That corner lays down correctly now. I just needed to go just another little bit. I mean, look what I trimmed off. Look what I trimmed off. Just barely, just a little bit more made all that difference. So the depth of where you sew that is very important. Okay, so I'm ready to sew this binding on. And I'm gonna start it at the bottom middle. I always start projects at the bottom middle. So I'm gonna find where I attached everything together and start there. And I will be sewing just above this edge, so to make sure it goes through the other side without missing the back side. And then I might add a zigzag to keep that tacked down when I'm done, but I'll look it over at that point. Okay, I've decided I'm gonna keep the left side of the presser foot against the edge of my bias tape. I don't know if you can see that or not. That will be my sew line. Hello. Oh, okay. The left side of my presser foot will be against the bias tape. That's where I'm gonna do my straight stitch, and then maybe I'll add a zigzag between the straight stitch and the edge as a second round, but we'll decide that later. I'm gonna pull out my pins as I go and make sure that my fold stays on this edge. Okay, and as I'm coming up upon my corner, I'm going to stitch down it and back, and then finish going down the next side. So I'll come along, down and back, and keep going. Okay, so nothing's perfect, including blanket bindings, but any little tucks I got, I just had them go the opposite way, like that with my finger, and pulled them out. And it looks like I caught up the back side just fine. Might have stretched a little too much to the back on that one because there's a lot there. But for the most part, it looks like a really good job. So I do have extra edge that I don't want showing or sticking up like this. So I am gonna do the zigzag, and I will zigzag the corners as well. It'll just help everything with a second stitch, especially the back side lay down like I want it to. Okay. Okay, I'm done, and I'm gonna check the back side just to make sure nothing looks missed, because I sewed from the front both times. It looks just fine. That zigzag really helps finish it so nothing is left sticking up. And nothing is perfect in this life, including my borders, but I don't want to cut it because that would leave a frayed edge, so leave your edge alone. And I don't think sewing it down a third time would help. It would make it too bulky. And that's why I do my corners mitered the way I do, so it doesn't stay thick and bulky. It's just so nice. All right, so I'm gonna throw it in the washing machine and the dryer and show you when it's done. Okay, my blanket's dry, and I love how it looks gathered on the edge. once it's washed and dried, and it just makes it look really nice. And the back side isn't perfect, but don't trim the excess because you would have a frayed edge. So just leave it alone. And I wouldn't sew it a third time because it would make it too thick. So it's fine. Enjoy it. I'm gonna fold it up and put it in the top of my trunk sitting over there. There's a lot of fun things in there for grandkids to do when they come visit. Talk to you later.